Welcome to Eerie Trails. Where the roads twist deeper than they should, and shadows remember your name. Here, every story is more than just a tale. It's a warning. So buckle up, keep your lights on, and whatever you do, don't stop listening, because on these trails, something is always following. Let's start our first story. The Walmart off Highway 67 near Midlothian, Texas, stayed open 24 hours, or at least it used to. This was before the town started whispering about what happened there during the graveyard shift. The incident was scrubbed from the news, the security footage was sealed, and the store now locks its doors at 11 p.m. sharp. It started slow. Like all creeping things, Calvin Wright worked overnight stocking shelves. He liked the quiet, the hum of the refrigerated cases, the long empty aisles. He said it gave him space to think. He was 28, a lanky ex-army guy with sharp eyes and a habit of talking to himself. That night, it was just Calvin, Doris from cleaning, and Jimmy at self-checkout maintenance. That's what management said. 3 scheduled employees. But Calvin swore he saw a fourth. She was in the toy aisle, bent low in front of the Barbie dolls, black hoodie, greasy hair spilling down her face. Just still. Not browsing, not moving, just crouched like a shadow that forgot how to behave. "Ma'am, we're closed to customers. You'll have to come back in the morning," Calvin said. No response. He took a cautious step forward. His boots squeaked on the wax tile. She didn't flinch, just stayed frozen like a spider waiting to pounce. That's when he noticed the smell, like mildew and wet copper. "Ma'am?" She turned. Her eyes were wrong, milky white and sunken deep in her skull. Her face looked melted, like it had been scorched and then healed all wrong. Calvin staggered back, heart hammering. But in the next second, she was gone. Nothing there but Barbie boxes and his own breathing. He told Doris. She shrugged and said she'd seen her too, weeks ago. Every Friday around 3 a.m., always in toys, always crouched. Jimmy? He laughed. "You guys need sleep. There's nobody here but us." But the next night, Jimmy stopped showing up. No call, no warning, just vanished. And when Doris went to clock out, she screamed. Her cleaning cart was gone. Instead, there was a long trail of smeared water leading from the back bathrooms to the stockroom. And at the end of that trail, a single black hoodie, soaked and reeking of rust. Calvin tried quitting. He swore he'd never go back. But the dreams didn't stop. Narrow aisles that stretched forever, the smell of rot, and that crouched figure inching closer. He died in his sleep 3 weeks later. Heart failure, the coroner said. But his hands were curled like he'd been clawing at his bedsheets, and his fingernails were torn to the quick. Now the locals say if you're driving past that Walmart around 3 a.m., don't look in the windows. Don't slow down. And if you see someone crouching in the dark aisle of toys, staring with white dead eyes, keep driving. Let's start our second story. The Walmart in El Campo was built on old rice farmland. Most folks forgot about the floods of '59. The year half the town was underwater and 3 migrant workers drowned in a barn that once stood where the electronics section is now. They never found the bodies. The barn was razed, and years later, the Walmart went up. Clara was a seasonal hire during Black Friday season. 20 years old, broke, and working electronics at midnight for extra cash. The madness of doorbusters had died down. The floor was quiet. Clara stood near the TV wall, half asleep and sipping a warm energy drink when one of the screens flickered. It showed static at first, then black and white footage of a barn. Inside, water up to the knees. 3 men screaming in Spanish. The video was grainy, distorted, but unmistakably real. Clara blinked. The image vanished. Another screen lit up. Then another. Same barn. Same flood. She called for her supervisor, but by the time he arrived, the screens were all back to normal blaring commercials. He laughed it off, told her to get some air. She went to the back lot for a smoke. But the moment the door shut behind her, she heard rushing water. Except there was no rain. No broken pipes. She turned. The ground was wet, soaked, and the smell, that deep earthy rot, like dead roots and swamp water, curled into her nostrils. She backed away, nearly slipping. That's when she saw the shadows in the lot. 3 of them, not walking, floating. Bloated figures, arms limp, faces draped in hair and moss. Clara screamed and ran. But when security reviewed the footage, there was nothing. Just her screaming, alone in the lot, soaked to the skin. She quit the next morning, drove to Houston. Never came back. But some nights, when the humidity's just right, and the store is half empty at midnight, the screens still flicker. And if you're unlucky enough to see the barn on them, run. Because if you wait too long, the floor starts flooding too. And then they come. Let's start our third story. Beaumont, Texas. Highway 90. The Walmart there is shaped weird. It doesn't match the usual layout. That's because it was a retrofitted building from the 70s. Before it was a Walmart, it was a mental hospital. Locals never talk about that part. Records were lost in a fire. But the patients? Some say they never left. Harold Boone, night shift manager, didn't believe in ghost stories. Ex-Marine, gruff, big arms and bigger lungs. He ran a tight crew, all business. But even Harold had to admit something was off in the back room. The lights flickered, yes. Pallets shifted on their own. Radios turned on at full volume, then went dead. But the worst was the freezer. It would lock by itself. 3 separate employees got trapped in there across 2 months. One guy broke his hand pounding on the door. Said he heard whispering behind him the whole time, low voices saying his name over and over. Harold investigated himself. Took a flashlight and walked back into the freezer one night after everyone left. He never came out. The next morning, they found him inside, but he wasn't frozen. No frostbite, no hypothermia. Just curled in the fetal position, eyes wide open, whispering, "They're still here. They're still here." They sent him to a hospital in Galveston. No one's heard from him since. New hires say the back room feels like it breathes. The shelves moan when you walk past. The shadows don't match your steps. And if you ever hear someone humming, "You Are My Sunshine," leave. That was the song the head nurse used to sing in the old asylum, right before the patient started dying. Let's start our fourth story. On the edge of Lubbock sits a Walmart that no GPS can track properly. You'll get close, and the dot moves past it. Try to map it, doesn't pin. Locals just say, "Yeah, it's there, but it's not on there." Teenagers dare each other to go inside after dark. Not illegally, it's a 24-hour location. But the stories say something happens past midnight. Brandon and his 2 friends went in around 1:12 a.m. on a dare. Normal stuff at first. They filmed themselves goofing off, walking through empty aisles, pretending to be ghost hunters. But their footage, which later surfaced online, caught something else. At 1:39 a.m., the footage glitches. Their voices distort. Shelves start repeating in the background, as if they're walking in circles, but the product names don't change. Ritz Crackers aisle. Over and over, then it goes quiet. The camera catches Brandon walking forward, his face confused. He whispers, "Didn't we just pass this?" His friends laugh nervously. Then one disappears mid-frame. Just gone. No noise, no movement, just cut. The lights start dimming. One by one. Brandon screams. You hear it echo from a different part of the store, like the building twisted or grew deeper. His last words on the footage? "Something's in the walls." His two friends were found outside by morning, huddled near carts, mumbling nonsense. They refused to enter any Walmart again. Brandon was never found, but every few weeks, employees report seeing a kid on the security monitors, wandering. Same clothes Brandon wore. Only thing is, he's not in the store. Not really. Just on the cameras, smiling. Watching Dot, and if you ever catch him looking straight at you through the screen, clock out, leave, never return. Turn. Let's start our fifth story. The Walmart off Loop 463 in Victoria, Texas, was known for its size, a sprawling behemoth of whitewashed walls and endless aisles. Locals joked you could get lost in there and not be found for days. But what happened to Georgia Neely wasn't a joke. It was the start of something the town still doesn't talk about openly. Georgia was 45, a single mom of two, working the third shift in grocery. She was no stranger to weird behavior. Shoplifters, tweakers, couples arguing by the rotisserie chicken. But what she saw that night didn't make sense in any human way. It started when she passed aisle 17. All the canned goods had been turned backward. Every label, every direction, facing the shelf instead of the shopper. At first, she assumed it was some prank teenagers maybe. But as she bent down to fix one, she noticed the labels were scratched. Not torn or peeled, but scraped, like clawed at. And behind the cans, in the space between the shelf and wall, someone had written, "Don't look behind you." She did anyway. No one there, but something had moved. She heard the wheels of a cart, slow and dragging, echo down the aisle. It came from nowhere. No footsteps, no voices. Just wheels and something heavy being pushed. She turned the corner. Fast. Nothing. Just her and the quiet hum of fluorescent lights. But then, every light above her aisle flicked off, not the others. Just hers. The darkness came like a falling curtain. She sprinted to the back room, locked herself inside. Her hands were shaking when she called her manager on the walkie, but he didn't answer. Instead, the speaker above her crackled to life. A voice, garbled, mechanical, childlike, said, "Georgia, come back to the aisle." She threw the walkie across the room. That's when she noticed her reflection in the metal supply door. It wasn't moving with her. It stood still, head tilted, then smiled. Georgia ran out the fire exit, full-on sprint. Into the parking lot. They found her hiding behind the garden center at dawn, barefoot and sobbing. She couldn't speak for 3 days. When she finally did, she whispered something over and over. They're in the walls. They feed on silence. They like when you turn your back. The store still operates. They just never use aisle 17 anymore. In fact, they removed it. But some nights, workers say they still hear the wheels of a cart rolling down an aisle that shouldn't exist, and cans slowly turning backward. One by one asterisk, let's start our sixth story on the outskirts of Amarillo. There's a Walmart near Interstate 40 that never really feels right, even during the day. The parking lot is too quiet. Birds don't land there. The automatic doors hesitate, like they don't want to open. Locals say it's cursed ground, that years ago, before the superstore was built, the land belonged to a slaughterhouse. Some say the earth itself still remembers the blood. Terrence Boyd, night janitor, didn't believe in superstition. He was a practical man. Mop, bucket, headphones in, no nonsense. He clocked in at 10 p.m. like always. But something about that night felt off from the beginning. It started in the deli. He found raw meat outside the case. Sliced ham, pale and glistening, stacked neatly in the shape of a child's face. Not arranged like a joke, more like someone spent time crafting it. The eyes were 2 slices of olive, a piece of cheese for a crooked smile. He called it in to security. The footage showed no one in the deli for hours. He cleaned it up. An hour later, he entered the toy section to mop and found all the talking dolls, Those creepy plastic baby ones turned to face the floor. Each one lying prone, arms and legs twisted at sharp, unnatural angles, like they'd been dropped mid-exorcism. He touched one. Its voice box triggered. "I don't like him," it whispered in a distorted voice, not its default phrase. "Terrence." Froze. Another doll chimed in from further down the aisle. "He's in here with us." He ran the hell out of the section, heart pounding. Mop forgotten. Back in the storage room, he tried to pull himself together. Told himself it was a prank. Maybe he was overtired. But that's when the lights cut out, not with a pop, but a slow hum, like breath leaving lungs. And in the dark, he heard it, a wet dragging sound, something heavy being pulled across linoleum. He tried the door. It wouldn't open. He turned his phone light on, and there, on the far side of the stockroom, crouched something pale and flesh-colored, hunched behind a pallet of bottled water. It wasn't breathing. It just stared, motionless. Terrence whispered, "Who's there?" It moved impossibly fast, and he dropped the phone in terror. When he looked back, the thing was gone. He didn't finish his shift. He ran barefoot out the emergency exit and was found 3 hours later by a trucker crying behind the propane tank cage. They say Terrence never came back to Amarillo, but every few months, when new workers rotate in, they start reporting the same thing. Raw meat arranged into shapes. Dolls that whisper. That wet dragging sound at the end of a shift. The store's manager shrugs it off, but the janitor's closet is always locked now, and no one can explain the child-sized footprints that sometimes appear on the inside of the mop sink. Asterisk. Let's start our 7th story in Brownsville. Right along Highway 77, there's a Walmart with a garden center that locals quietly avoid once the sun sets. People will shop, browse, even linger until 10 p.m. But no one, not even the regulars, steps into the garden section after dark. Not anymore. Rosa Velasquez used to laugh at the rumors. She'd worked there nearly 4 years, mostly on register duty, but when her hours were cut, she picked up closing shifts in the garden center. Extra pay, fewer customers, and a breeze from the open fencing. It was almost peaceful. Until the night the wind stopped. It was a Thursday, late October. Rosa was finishing up, sweeping between rows of ceramic pots and wind chimes, when she noticed the air had gone dead still. No breeze, not even from the giant industrial fan humming in the corner. It had stopped without a sound. She paused. Listened. Then she heard it, soft rustling like dry leaves. But the floor was concrete. There were no leaves. The rustling came again. It was coming from inside the greenhouse. Now, the greenhouse was locked at night. Customers weren't allowed in. But as Rosa stepped closer, she saw the latch swinging loose. The door was slightly open. She hesitated, broom gripped tight. The rustling turned into whispers. Low, fast, in Spanish, but too jumbled to make out. She pushed the door open. Rows of plants stood still in the moonlight. All the overhead lights were out. It smelled earthy, rich, but something was wrong with the soil. It was too dark, too wet, like it had just rained inside. She took one cautious step forward. Then another. That's when she saw the footprints. Bare, small, child-sized, leading between the tomato seedlings and the succulents. She followed them slowly, heart hammering. The trail ended at a stack of unopened fertilizer bags. But one of them, the largest one, was ripped open, spilling dark clumps onto the floor, and something was moving inside it. She turned to run, but the door slammed shut behind her. The whispering grew louder. "Buried? Buried?
Buried."
Alive," she screamed, pounding on the glass. Lights flickered outside. Motion sensors. Someone was walking through the garden center. She could see the silhouette on the other side, a man. Tall, standing still, "Help!" she yelled. "Please." The silhouette didn't move. She kept screaming, crying now, but the man only watched. Then, slowly, he lifted one hand and placed a shovel over his shoulder. Rosa blacked out. When they found her, she was unconscious inside the greenhouse, half buried in fertilizer. Her name tag was stuffed in her mouth. The plants around her had all wilted. Despite being watered the day before, she quit the next morning. Management reviewed the security footage. Every camera in the garden center cut out for exactly 13 minutes. No footage. No log. Just silence. The only record left was a single image from a motion sensor snapshot. Blurry, hard to make out, but unmistakably a man holding a shovel, standing beside a ripped bag of fertilizer. His face? Missing. Not blurred. Just absent. Now. Employees leave offerings near the greenhouse. A flower, a toy, a small cross. They say it keeps the whispering away. And they never, ever sweep the dirt after dark. Because whoever was buried under that soil is still waiting, and every time you move the earth, you bring him closer. Let's start our 8th story in Wichita Falls, off Lawrence Road, the Walmart. Supercenter was the pride of the town when it first opened. Shiny floors, endless aisles, even its own subway built inside. But something strange began after the remodeling in 2018, when they tore down an old wing and expanded the storage area. Since then, some employees started whispering about the extra door. Jacob Mendez was one of the newer stockers. He took the job to pay off school loans, usually pulled late-night hours. He wasn't superstitious. But during a routine restock, he noticed something strange in the rear storage hallway. A door that wasn't on the map. It was gray. No label, no knob, just a push bar. It sat between 2 shelves of excess paper towels, looking like it had always been there. But Jacob had walked that corridor 100 times. He'd never seen it before. He pushed it open. Inside was a narrow stairwell, concrete walls, no lights. A cold draft drifted up from below. That was the first warning. The second was the smell, mildew and copper earthy. Wrong. Still. Curiosity won. He descended, phone flashlight in hand. The steps went far deeper than they should have. Much deeper than the store's foundation. At least 4 stories underground. Finally, he reached the bottom. Let's start our 9th story. The Walmart in Temple, Texas, off South 31st Street, had a reputation among its night staff. Don't volunteer for inventory shift in the seasonal aisle after 2 a.m. No one said why. It was just understood. Jamal was new and didn't care about whispers. He was 19, needed the job, and didn't believe in ghost stories. So when his manager asked for a volunteer to scan clearance, Christmas decorations during overnight hours in April, he shrugged and said sure. He rolled his scanner cart into aisle 14 at 2:13 a.m. That's when the temperature dropped. He rubbed his arms. Even the fan stopped spinning. The aisle was long, fully stocked with leftover red and green wrapping paper, fake snow, and blinking reindeer that hadn't blinked since January. Everything looked dusty, untouched, silent. Scanned the first few items. His scanner beeped, logged the data. But then, it beeped again by itself. He looked down. It had scanned something behind him. An item code appeared, number 666,144, child figurine. Porcelain, unpackaged, frowned. There was no figurine. He deleted the entry and kept working. A few minutes later, it beeped again. Same code. Same entry. This time, he looked up and saw something small at the far end of the aisle. A child's silhouette, perfectly still. He blinked. It was gone. Then the reindeer lights flickered. He backed away, but his scanner Beeped again. He didn't touch it. Number 666,144, child figurine. One of two. The one of two part chilled him. He ran. Left the cart, the scanner, everything. In the break room, he didn't say a word. Just sat shaking until his shift ended. 2 nights later, he was assigned to pets. Far from seasonal, safe. Or so he thought. At 2:14 a.m., the scanner beeped on its own. Number 666,144, child figurine. 2 of 2. Then the lights dimmed. They found Jamal in the cat litter aisle at dawn. Eyes wide, mouth open like he'd screamed for hours. No pulse. No cause of death. But security footage? For exactly 60 seconds, every camera on the floor went dark. When they came back online, the only thing visible in the seasonal aisle was a small porcelain doll, standing on a shelf with its head slightly tilted. They tried removing it, but it always came back. Let's start our 10th story in Odessa. Walmart Supercenter number 512 sits just off Andrews Highway. Locals call it the sinkhole store, not because of any geological issue, but because things and people tend to vanish in its backroom. Jacob Tiller, a former assistant manager, had kept a private log of everything that went missing. During his 4 years there, a pallet jack, 4 carts, a floor buffer, 2 employees. The first was Brenda, who simply never returned from a restroom break during an overnight shift. Cameras showed her walk toward the rear hallway. Then, nothing. No exit. No return. But Jacob's focus was on the backroom freight elevator. It wasn't connected to anything above, just a small lift used for heavy inventory. But he swore he saw it rise one night without being called, just past 3. He went to check. The elevator doors were open. Empty. Except for a single, old-fashioned wooden chair with a red cushion, dustless, like it had just been placed there. He leaned in. Something moved behind him, but there was no one there. The lights flickered, and he stepped back. The elevator door slammed shut on its own. The next morning, the elevator was found open, the chair gone. Jacob started having dreams. A dark shaft, endless. Something whispering from the bottom, sit, just for a moment. He tried transferring stores, quit, changed numbers, didn't matter. 1 month later, his neighbors found his door open. House empty. All that remained was a red cushioned chair in the middle of his living room. And no one's used the elevator since. But every few months, someone finds the doors open again. Chair inside, and someone hears the whisper, just sit. Let's start our 11th story in College Station. There's a Walmart where the intercom system sometimes speaks. By itself. It started small. Random garbled messages at night. Beeps with no announcements. Static that hummed like breathing. Then it escalated. Employees reported hearing names being called. Not all at once. Only when they were alone. Amy was the first to document it. She was closing registers alone when she heard her own name over the speaker. Amy, register 4. Except all registers were shut down. She checked with her manager. He hadn't paged anyone. Then a week later, Daniel, a new hire, heard it. 2. Daniel, behind you. He turned. Nothing. But cameras showed him pale and shaking. Eventually, one employee brought in a priest, secretly. He didn't announce who he was, just walked the perimeter, muttering prayers. Within 5 minutes, the speaker system blew out completely. They replaced it. Brand new equipment. 2 nights later, it started again. Except now it whispered full sentences. She's still here. Don't go home tonight. She wants your face. Security checked everything. Nothing on logs. Nothing on playback. And the worst part? Sometimes the intercom clicks on at 2:11 a.m. every Thursday and plays old music. from the 1980s, even though there's no file like that in their system, and if you're working alone, it plays louder dot and louder dot and louder dot until you unplug the system or leave the store. Let's start our 12th story in San Angelo. Walmart number 730 has a break room that nobody uses after midnight. Not because it's unsafe, but because of the mirror. It's old, cheap, warped glass from the 90s. And sometimes, just sometimes, it shows someone sitting behind you. Not always, but enough. Darla, a cashier, was the first to see her. Sitting 2 tables behind, pale, hair soaked like she'd just come in from a storm, staring without blinking. Darla turned. No one there. She looked back in the mirror. The woman stood now, closer. The next morning, Darla quit. The next night, the cleaning crew covered the mirror with cardboard, but the cardboard fell. Every time. Eventually, they nailed a sheet over it. Didn't matter. The reflection still appeared. And one night, a new employee, Carl, dared to sit across from it. Looking directly into the glass at 3:06 a.m., he never left. His body was found. In the morning, still seated, blood dripping from both ears, eyes rolled up. But the camera showed no one entering or leaving the break room all night. Except for one still frame. 3:06 a.m. A woman standing directly behind him in the mirror. Smiling. Let's single quotes s start our 13th story in Denton. The Walmart near University Drive has a strange phenomenon. Sometimes entire aisles go missing from memory. People walk into an aisle, then forget what they were doing, what they came for, even who they are. It started with customers, confused, wandering, trying to remember where they parked. But then it happened to staff. Marcy, 61, worked there since 2004. One night, she went to aisle 27 to check pricing. She didn't come back. 10 minutes later, she was found standing in sporting goods, eyes vacant, mumbling aisle 27 over and over, but the store only has 26 aisles. The floor plan confirms it. Maps, blueprints, everything. So why do so many people keep walking into aisle 27? Why does it show up on receipts? One man tried to record his trip down it. Walked in with a GoPro. The footage went black after 19 seconds. When it returned, he was standing in front of frozen pizzas, crying uncontrollably. He doesn't remember walking there. He doesn't remember his name. Just one thing. Sound of someone whispering numbers over and over, slowly counting down. And that concludes our journey through the haunted highways of Texas. But the road doesn't end here. There are still miles of dark asphalt and forgotten trails where something waits. If you made it this far, maybe you're brave enough to come back for the next ride. Until then, keep your lights on. And don't trust the road when it goes quiet. This is Eerie Trails, and we'll see you in the next nightmare.